Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Matt Kellogg from StreamGuys is with us. He's going to be talking about things like geo-targeting, geo-fencing, and lots of other issues that we need to know about modern-day streaming, including video streaming as well. That's something new for radio stations, and we need to pay attention to it. Matt Kellogg joins us on This Week in Radio Tech. We're brought to you by Lavo and the new Ruby Visual Radio Console. Ruby is a new kind of console for a new radio environment. By BSW Broadcast Supply Worldwide, where it's the June summer clearance. Save up to 54% at bswusa.com. And by the Telos Alliance and the new Omnia Volt audio processor. Leave your competition in the dust. Hey, welcome to This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Delighted that you're here. We're going to have a great time today on the show. I've been excited to have our guest on for quite a while now, and he's here. So hang on, I'll tell you more about it in just a minute. First of all, let's bring in our co-host. That's Chris Tobin in probably New something, Jersey, New York. Hey, Chris, welcome in.
I'm in a voice booth in New Jersey, yes. This is a quick ad hoc. I was going to try and do a rooftop segment, but unfortunately I've got other stuff that I do right after the show, so time doesn't permit. So it's a booth. It's very nice. I'm not too disappointed. Sometimes those rooftop shots are tough. Wind, rain, lightning. They're challenging. Yeah, but I try to I test out new technologies when I do that, so it's fun.
Right. And now you've been using your Ubiquity setup for quite a while, and then sometimes you've used just Wi-Fi off of leaky coax, as you describe it, in buildings that are so equipped. So that's pretty cool.
Yes,
what do you think might be next?
Distributed antenna systems. I'm not sure. Trying to come up with a cellular approach just for fun.
Sure. Well, we've done the 4G LTE several times, even shows together, like in Las Vegas. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And on a rooftop in New York City for the 50th anniversary of the antenna.
Yes, that was a good one. That worked out very well.
Yeah. So maybe next week, I wonder if you could get your hand on some of those IP radios that are up in the, I don't know, many gigahertz range, like 60 gig.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes. Actually, let me make a few phone calls. I might be able to persuade somebody to let me try something out. Let me make a few calls.
And then the other cool thing would be the light-based transmission.
Oh, like the Cano beams. Yeah,
some kind of laser-based. Those Cano beams were really expensive, I'm sure. You think they have some other stuff now. Li-Fi, right? Isn't that what they're calling it?
Yep, Li-Fi.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. See what we come up with. This should be a summer of fun.
Sure. It'd be fun. Hey, we didn't do it last week, but now we have the ability to do the show from poolside at the pool where my wife's cabin is, because I put in a Ubiquity Wi-Fi hotspot at the cabin, and it's pointed through the foliage, which is a problem, but it's pointed through the foliage all the way down to the pool, which is like a 45-degree angle straight down. It's 200 feet down and 200 feet across over to where it is. But I did a speed test there. I'm getting about 12 meg down and 12 meg up from the pool area. So that could work. Nice. Yeah, that could work. Yeah. You don't want to see me by the pool, though. No point in that.
Well, as long as you're properly attired with fabric over the, it's just, you're good.
I'll be dressed just like this. So.
That's fine. Little pina colada, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. I'll have to make it myself. There's no service there. There's barely a restroom, so do that. Hey, all right. Enough of this. This is the show, This Week in Radio Tech, where we talk about broadcast technology, from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower, and there's so much in between. And it's getting more and more so. I mean, it used to be there were only a few things between the microphone and the light bulb at the top of the tower, but now there's so much. And we get to talk about streaming again today. And a lot of times we've talked about streaming on this show, and honestly, it's been my opinion, because I've got a number of radio stations that are streaming, and I work for a company, the Telos Alliance, that does a lot of streaming products and audio processing for streaming. So I have that worldview on streaming, but I'm sure there is more to it than what I know. And that's why we're bringing today in our guest, Matt Kellogg from StreamGuys. Matt, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Chris, for having me. Appreciate it. Really happy to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here too. You're coming from a new remote office for StreamGuys, yeah?
That's right. We just opened up a new office in San Luis Obispo. So we are up and down the California corridor with our headquarters in Bayview, just outside of Arcata, California. My remote office is in the Bay Area, San Luis Obispo, and now we have an office in San Diego.
Wow. Okay. I need to get out there and see you guys. That's a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah. The bad news is if the big one comes, there's going to be nobody left.
Okay. Well, maybe you could put a data center right here in Nashville where there's no such thing as the big one.
Well, here's the good news. None of our data centers are on the West Coast, just all the employees.
Just the people. Okay. All right. We should add data centers to our list of things to talk about today. By the way, we have a lot of engineers watching the show, and plenty of us engineers are picky about what we see, whether it's incorrect technique or that kind of thing. And I want to tell everybody that I know that Matt, our guest, Matt Kellogg's microphone is kind of away from his head. And some of you are going to go, why does he have his microphone away from his head? Why isn't it right there in front of his mouth? Well, because that particular headset that he got there is a little bit too loud with the mic here. And there's no way to turn it down at the headset, only in the Skype app. So anyway, before we got some email about that, Matt sounds fine with the mic out here, and that's the way we're going to go with the show because that mic is it's really sensitive. And, Matt kind of projects.
I think you're being too kind. I'm just a loudmouth. Let's admit it. Let's be honest.
We're going to talk about geofencing, geotargeting, metadata, what is, things that are coming up next in streaming, what's important to do right, and some of the cool ideas that the guys at StreamGuys have put together for broadcasters and podcasters and other people to use to get their shows distributed. So that's all coming up. This Week in Radio Tech, our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Lavo, LAWO.com, Lavo. And by the way, when you go to their website, and I want you to do that, go to the Lavo website, and when you do, type in Lavo, LAWO.com/TWiRT. That's the name of the show you're watching, right? And that way they'll know that we sent you there, and that you decided to go to Lavo as a result of hearing this ad. Lavo has long been involved with making those big audio consoles that they use for big live venue events. The Olympics, right? Opera broadcasts, symphony broadcasts, the World Cup. Then they've taken their German engineering and applied that into a whole line of radio consoles, and those are being used by the BBC, by the CBC in Canada, by NPR, for example, in Washington, D.C. They're fully outfitted with Lavo consoles, and man, do they sound good, and they are so reliable. Well, if you go to lavo.com/TWiRT, it'll take you right to the radio on air page at lavo.com/TWiRT. And you can click on whatever you're interested in. Maybe it's radio consoles. They have a whole line of radio consoles that are small and expandable and just right for radio broadcasters. Also, virtual radio consoles. We talked about that for quite a while here on the show with Lavo sponsoring the show. Virtual radio consoles. Routing systems also there. Really reliable, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Hey, Lavo is all about routing, including audio over IP, AOIP routing using the AES67 compatible Ravenna standard. Then there's also completely virtual radio with their new Relay line. You can click a link there and read all about Relay. Hey, at the NAB show, Lavo introduced a new console. It's the Ruby console. This thing is gorgeous, and it's a mix of hands-on hardware and touchscreen software to get you into this notion that you can do more with your console than just mix audio. That's also what Relay is about, is being able to do several things. Hey, PCs today are so powerful, they can do a lot more than what you're calling on them to do. So check out lavo.com/TWiRT. A huge infrastructure is building there of putting together broadcast facilities that make a lot of sense. And by the way, their consoles have this auto mix and auto level feature where you bring guests in, you don't know if they're going to talk loud or not. Like Matt, our guest here, we don't have any idea. Well, their consoles will automatically set the level, the preamp level of your guests, so that the auto mix works great, mixing your guests together, turning down those who aren't talking, and getting them right there on mic when they do talk to give you the best possible mix. Thanks again to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And remember, the link is lavo.com/TWiRT. TWiRT. All right, here we are. We're talking on This Week in Radio Tech. Chris Tobin is with us, and so is Matt Kellogg. And Chris, we're talking about streaming, and I know you've done plenty of that, and I hope to find out more. Matt, I've always associated StreamGuys, and correct me if I'm wrong here, with for some reason with NPR. Do you guys involved with NPR?
Very heavily. That is working with the nonprofit sector, one of our largest verticals, for a lack of a better word. And with nonprofit, as you know, NPR leads the market in that. So we have pretty much the corner market on NPR. We are the streaming fallback for NPR satellite services. So if these satellite services go down, we pick up the internet feed there and we'll deliver that. And some of our standout clients, KCRW, WNYC, from coast to coast, we deliver not only live streaming, but the on-demand content with the ability to monetize as well.
Okay. Let's spend a few minutes talking about some of the technical aspects of streaming, and then we'll get into kind of business and future aspects. One of the things that early in streaming's history, that as a consumer I sure noticed, and this is the folks at Telos noticed this too, is bad levels just all over the place, quality all over the place, and you wouldn't have your radio station sounding like a lot of people's streams sounded. Talk to me a bit about StreamGuys and your philosophy on helping radio stations to, first of all, provide a quality, consistent audio product to their encoder, and then talk to me about what you guys, your best practice for encoding and getting that to you as the CDN.
Wow, that's a lot of great stuff right there, and just a lot of stuff come to mind. The point I would want to make first, at the end of the day, it's all about signal flow and maintaining consistency across that. So if you have a good mix coming out of your automation and play out into a encoder, like an Omnia encoder, with good pipe, so you have available bandwidth to send a high bit rate signal out to the player or your app or your website, as long as the signal flow is there without too much mushing, expanding, decoding, and encoding, the better off you're going to be. So the more roadblocks that you put in there, the less quality you're going to have. One good example is a client we're working with that has gone with a very exciting new piece of equipment called Pico. Are you familiar with them?
I don't think so. Well, I'm familiar with a company called Pico, but which product is this?
So this is affiliated with their satellite delivery system, but what they're able to do now is send out audio from their automation and playout through HLS that goes into Pico, which makes it HLS, going straight to the satellite. So they're getting their signal across the United States to their different sticks. Now, what we're able to do is pick up that HLS straight from the Pico and deliver that. So we don't have to encode. There's no transcoding. There's no decoding. So that signal flow it's maintaining itself. So that would be the first thing that I would say. Signal flow, very important. If that is good, your stream should be good. The second thing I would want to say about that is we've come a long way in the streaming world since 15 years ago when we started, where in the infancy, streaming bit rates, because of the bandwidth that was available, was so small. So radio stations, many of which started out at 32 kilobit per second MP3, which we would all agree right now sounds impossible to listen to. It's gone up maybe a little bit, but that is maintained over the course of time. So not a very high bit rate, creating a problem. Now this is a situation that we see often, and what we want to do at StreamGuys is we want to educate our radio stations that we work with, because what I hear all the time when talking to radio station is, yeah, I have streaming, but nobody listens.
Mhm.
Well, nobody's listening because your streaming sounds horrible. So I got to say that in a nice way, obviously, but that's the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
we know that nobody's going to listen to your stream if it doesn't sound good. Why doesn't it sound good? You're possibly not doing it at a bit rate. Your play out signal might not be good. You're maybe using a horrible encoder. If you're using something like a 9x2 or even the X2 from Omnia, which is amazing, then we can at least ensure a good quality. And if you have enough bandwidth to send out a 128 kilobit per second signal for at least MP3, then we can ensure you're going to have good quality. And from there, you can find yourself seeing larger listening audiences online.
You know, what I'm hearing, what I'm inferring from what you're saying is that stations, and this goes from engineering and management and programming all together, you need to really be thinking about your streaming effort on the same footing, quality-wise, as your over-the-air effort. Because if you, it used to be that streaming was this about redheaded stepchild, right? Oh yeah, the stream's on. Oh, the stream's been off. How long's it been off? Oh, it's been off for a week. Oh, we're gonna get that fixed. You wouldn't go for your transmitter being off for a week, and you wouldn't go for your transmitter having poor audio processing, and you wouldn't go for your on-air signal having levels all over the place. Chris Tobin, you're streaming there in a pretty competitive market, the number one market in the country there in the New York City area. Talk to me about streaming up there, and if people are doing it right, or there's still people who are haven't caught on yet.
Well, it depends on who you ask as far as what is considered doing it right or correctly. Yes, very competitive here in New York City, and the streams are they're pretty much on par with what you would expect. I don't think I've scanned through the marketplace and found anybody doing it very terrible or horrible, if you will. I think the hardest part has been what folks do with the stream. The quality of the audio is straightforward. I don't think anybody in the market's doing poorly. The part that I still have sometimes issues with is the stop sets, the breaks, or the pre-rolls, and all the various different incarnations of what people believe is best served for the audience. There are still some of the major players are still doing 30-second spots, inserts in their streams. So it's kind of weird, And then you go to people with non-traditional
as a pre-roll or as something that's interstitial.
As interstitial, pre-roll, it varies. I mean, it's sometimes all over the place. There are a few folks, the nonprofits have a very straightforward approach. So that's not even an issue. It's the profit folks that seem to be all over the place. But the quality of the audio, in most cases, has always been very good. Yeah, we use StreamGuys here at this facility. So for full disclosure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know when we set Matt up to be on the show. Matt, let's talk a bit about stream splicing and interstitial and spot replacement. As a small-time broadcaster like I am, we own 8 small-time radio stations, most of which are streaming now. In fact, I think all of them are streaming now. But we don't do spot replacement. The only thing we don't stream are a couple of sports broadcasts that our contract specifically says we can't stream. So talk to me about replacement audio from a practical point of view. How does that work, and what are your customers doing with that, and how does it come out in the end to the listener?
Well, first I want to say thank you to Chris for taking StreamGuys services to New York City. I think I would be remiss saying that. When you're talking about audio replacement, there's a couple different things. First off, you have from as you were talking, interstitial ad or mid-roll advertising, you have ad replacement. And some of the terms that get thrown around now are SSAI, server-side ad insertion, most commonly known as dynamic ad insertion. This is a good way of, and you'll see major markets doing this, to monetize your streaming audience with a new revenue stream. So you are now creating a new revenue stream by adding extra ads into those spot sets that are being replaced. They're replacing the over-the-air ads. It's simple enough. However, with internet advertising, it's a different model. You're not going off a CUM. You're not going off big numbers. You're not even going off sponsorships. Most oftentimes, you're going off a CPM. And to drive CPM revenue, you need to have audience. So you could talk about monetizing your streams all day long. I love talking about it. It is important because you have a bottom line that you have to deal with, and streaming is adding an expense to your bottom line. So we want to improve your bottom line and your user experience at StreamGuys. We don't want to take money away from you, from the GM, from potential bonuses or raises for your day part jocks or whatnot. So that's one side. And the opposite end of that I think should be talked about a little bit, and I think Chris brought it up a little bit, talking about the pre-rolls. When you're not doing server-side ad insertion or dynamic ad insertion, and you are running pre-rolls, that means you're doing client-side, which means if you have an ad blocker, your player will not play the radio station. That happens way too often. And what happens on the user experience, you don't know that. Some media companies are savvy enough to recognize you have an ad blocker and will let you know. But oftentimes, streaming services that have ad blockers on and you have a client-side pre-roll that you've inserted yourself, you can't tell. So it looks to me this station's not working, so I'm navigating away. So again, we want to improve the user experience, and with replacement technology for audio on the ad serving side, that's one way that you can improve your user experience and maintain longer listening time. For content replacement, it's a whole different beast, but it's certainly something that we can continue to talk about. What you're talking about is replacing content online with something else. This is done a couple of different ways, as you mentioned, for sports programming, probably the primary for content. We can do this a couple of different ways. We talked a little bit, or we will talk about geofencing or geo-targeting content, but we have a solution that we've created called SG Recast that is a simple blackout program replacement, and it's a software as a solution. So it's a cloud-based solution that says if you have a football game scheduled at 1 p.m. and you know it's going to be 3 hours, you can upload content, a 3-hour section of content that will automatically play on that stream, and you don't have to do anything. There's no board ops, and you could actually schedule a 16, 17-week NFL season all the way down the line with that program content all within the cloud by just uploading content. There's other ways you could do that. As we mentioned, you can do geofencing, which would allow you to go in market and out of market. So sometimes in certain DMAs with MLB and other large sports networks, you aren't allowed to you could have your local carrier play the game, but outside of that DMA, those rules don't apply. If you have a 50,000 watt flamethrower, that could be a problem, right? So what you would do is set up geofencing with your stream that would determine essentially the points of where that stream will stop. And we can do that with StreamGuys technology. And we set up a border. So say if I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area and the DMA is essentially 100 miles north of San Francisco, at 101 miles, we can set that to where even though that stream should still be available, you're hearing not the game, you're hearing something else. So you could geofence replacement. You could use cloud services like our SG Recast to do content replacement, server-side ad insertion, or dynamic ad insertion for ad replacement.
Wow. So it sounds like, and I really haven't come up to speed on this. It sounds like the services that you guys at StreamGuys offer is almost an adjunct to your own programming because your stream may need to be treated differently. So instead of handling these things in your own automation system, there are reasons, geofencing, geotargeting especially, to handle them at the point of distribution where because you guys know the IP addresses from which people are listening, the radio station doesn't know that, and so it's the only place you can take care of this is at a CDN like StreamGuys. So am I correct in adjusting my thinking here that my interacting with a dashboard or an interface at StreamGuys needs to become part of my programming in getting my radio station out because of geographic restrictions?
Well, that's a great question, because looking at your streaming analytics and data that you're getting, you could parse it so many different ways, right? So for the geofencing, again, if you're looking at program replacement, you can do that, and it can be done very simply. We could do that a couple of different ways. It's just a matter of determining, where you need to set up those zones. A lot of people will do inside U.S., outside U.S. Sometimes if you're streaming, you probably heard, sorry, you can't hear the stream right now. You are out of the designated area, kind of that robot voice. Sometimes people will do that. So, for example, people just want to stream in the United States only. They don't want the world to listen. That's okay. And we can set that up for you. So you could do it within a state. We were talking to a college that really wanted to do just the state of Texas. They didn't want anybody from Louisiana to listen to their country radio station. So no problem. We do it by state. We could do it by DMA. We could do it by zip code. We could do it by country as well.
Chris Tobin, I'm curious about your radio station. Are there any countries that you don't want them to hear any jazz music?
No, I believe we have it open to everybody. Best of my knowledge. I haven't received any emails to the contrary. Yeah. No, we got a lot of folks in Europe and in Japan and that part of the world and Asia. So no, as far as I know, nobody.
Yeah.
I should say this: we don't prohibit. We don't prohibit, but there are other countries that prohibit IP addresses from coming in from outside. So I will tell you, we've had calls for. Yes.
Yeah. This is an interesting problem, and of course, a lot of it has to do with with rights management and royalty payments. Where if your stream is available around the world, does that cost the radio station more money just to play the same music? Your licensing and performance rights are typically based on the fact you're a radio station. You have a limited geographic reach. But if you're streaming around the world, how does that change the picture of how artists and composers get compensated? And that's I don't know when we're going to come to a wonderful conclusion on that. As a broadcaster, I'm not excited about it. Living in Nashville, my friends, my neighbors are writers and performers. I get it; they have to get paid. So that's an interesting problem to have. Two of my radio stations are in American Samoa. Well, there are more Samoans living on the west coast of the U.S. Than there are in American Samoa. So we have people all over the U.S. and other parts of the world who listen to our Samoan language station, and we want them to be able to do that in Hawaii, west coast especially of the U.S., but elsewhere as well. I got a guy in the Northeast that calls me if the stream's down. So. This is an interesting problem. We're going to talk a bit about geofencing and geotargeting. We've talked about that a bit. Matt, can you describe anything further about, let's say I wanted to target an ad buy to a particular region. I'm not thinking of a great example, but maybe you've got a store chain that calls itself one thing west of the Mississippi and calls itself something else east of the Mississippi. And I want the right ad to go to the right place, so people aren't, we're not wasting that perhaps 30 seconds of ad time on people that have no chance of buying from the store that we're advertising. Can you help me understand how that sets up and how that would work?
Absolutely. So that would fall under geo-targeting. So that's we're not blocking areas or restricting areas. Rather, we're targeting areas that we want content to be played, right? So, for example, we have Safeway on the West Coast, and it's Dominic's, I think, east of the Mississippi. At least it was 10 years ago when I lived in Chicago. What you would do was you would set up, and again, we kind of go back to that term, dynamic ad insertion or server-side ad insertion. And that's the technology that we make available to you, where you essentially would traffic these ads separately, and you could do them by state, by DMA, just like we talked about geofencing by DMA state. You can target by zip code, DMA, city, state, and or country. I always like to think of auto dealers because they're such a large part of our radio advertising revenue year after year, where you have multiple tiers. So, for example, you have your tier one or your Ford, Chevy of America. Then you have your regional, and then you have your local. So if I was a Las Vegas-based radio station and I had a advertiser in the automobile industry, I could provide them with not only local advertising revenue spots for maybe a co-op buy that can help a local advertiser out. We could take tier 2 and tier 3 and we could geo-target outside the DMA and then outside of the state. So you're hitting all 3 tiers of that automotive vertical.
So from my automation system and my stream encoding that's going to you, to StreamGuys for distribution, how do I let you guys know that it's time to play this ad? If it's not exact time, if it's within the program flow, do you guys have a special encoder? Metadata.
Nope,
okay.
Metadata.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. All right. That's
gonna be what we're seeing more often and really take over is metadata-based triggers. So simply, if you have a ad with a cart number, every track that you have on your automation has information on it, right? So what you would have in the metadata for an ad is you would have some specific language that once the encoder picks that up, it knows that it's triggering an ad break. And then what you have built into your clocks, you know how long your ad breaks are. For more automated and voice tracked radio stations that are music centric, this is a slam dunk. It's pretty easy. It can be a little tricky with talk radio, where oftentimes you're playing along network stations or you're taking a network feed. So oftentimes you have the board op playing a 10-second or a 5-second promo to make sure everything fits right. But for the most part, we don't see many problems with the metadata triggering. You could also use subaudible tones to trigger the ads as well.
Wow, now that's interesting. That's like a blast from the past. Subaudible tones. I thought we were all done with those. that's
I don't like to kick it to the curb just yet. So I don't want to. But metadata triggering is where we're seeing everything go. Obviously.
Cool. Okay. Now, one subject we're going to talk about coming up in a minute or two is that of adaptive multi-rate streaming, and we've had some other discussions here on the show about that. And I was delighted to find out that Matt Kellogg and StreamGuys are very much into this as a technology because it solves some real problems that streaming has. So you want listeners at home or in a stable internet environment to be able to listen at a high quality. And you want your mobile listeners to be able to automatically have as high a quality as they can get, but maintain a stream if the internet connection becomes rather poor or slow. So adaptive multi-rate streaming is one really good answer to that. We'll be talking about that in just a minute. You're listening to This Week in Radio Tech with Kirk Harnack here. Chris Tobin is in New Jersey, and Matt Kellogg is in San Luis Obispo in California. He's with StreamGuys. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Supply Worldwide, where the website is bswusa.com. And I got to tell you, if you aren't using their website and their catalogs as your reference material, you're missing out. I have done that for years, and BSW has this philosophy. They purchase and they stock in quantity so that it's ready to go out the door to you. And plenty of last minute things have I ordered from BSW. You know, they've had a big warehouse actually in Ohio, even though their offices are in the Tacoma, Seattle, Washington area. Their huge warehouse just full of broadcast and professional audio gear, semi-pro gear. It is near Columbus, Ohio. And they are right. I mean, they're a stone's throw from a huge airport, which is well served by by UPS and the other carriers who ship stuff around overnight. All this means you can order from bswusa.com as late as 7 p.m. Eastern time, and you have a very, very good chance of your product being in stock at their warehouse, getting boxed up that night, being on an airplane and on its way to you. I mean, how many times have we said, man, I'd like to finish this project, but I forgot to get this rack shelf, or I really need a 1RU CD player to go here, or, oh my gosh, I brought 3 headsets with me and I need 4. Well, bswusa.com is your answer. Of course, you can call them as well. You give them a phone call at their 800 number. In fact, if you want to make sure you got this in your phone, do so. It's 800-426-8434. That's 800-426-8434 or bswusa.com. Now, what about right now? In the month of June, they're having their big clearance sale. That means they got stuff in the warehouse that either hasn't been moving or they bought too many of it, whatever, and they've been able to put some price drops to get this stuff to move out. For example, the Tascam SSR250N. It's a networkable solid-state recorder player, supports high-resolution audio, and can upload recordings and download files for playback via an FTP server. You may have a cool use for this. Well, you get a $200 discount by entering the code R250 at checkout. That's a 40% savings, $200 off. There's terrific on-camera headsets, for example, from Shure, like the BRH50M. Lightweight comfort, superb audio quality. It's on sale for $399. There is a cool broadcast mixer. It's a B-stock version of JK Audio's Remote Mix 4. That's a 4-channel field mixer and headphone amp that gets triple duty as an advanced communications interface. It's factory sealed and got a full manufacturer warranty, even though it's B-stock. The JK Audio Remote Mix 4, that's on sale for just a hair over $1,100. And, oh, man, is it a workhorse to go out in the field. You can get codec packs with headsets and codecs from Tyline, like the new Tyline Via. That is on sale. Also, there is the new Orban Optimod 5500i 5-band processor. That's on sale. They say the price is too low to mention. There's this minimum advertised price policy. So give BSW USA a call or put it in your shopping cart and find out the price of it there. So the clearance sale up to 54% off this month at BSW, Broadcast Supply Worldwide. The website again, bswusa.com. I sure thank them for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, we're talking to Matt Kellogg of StreamGuys. He's here along with Chris Tobin. And let's talk about this thing called adaptive multi-rate streaming. I mentioned this to Matt a few days ago, and Matt was pretty excited. Matt, tell me what this is and how does it help people who are streaming and their listeners?
Well, again, it's all about the user experience, right? And let me ask you, when you're listening online or even watching a video online, and there's a hiccup in the connection, what do you normally see?
Buffering.
Yeah.
If you're watching something, it says buffering. Yeah.
Buffering.
Or if you're watching
right.
your player, sometimes I'm using the TuneIn player and get a bad connection and it says buffering. Yeah.
Buffering. Right.
Loading.
HLS is a protocol that Apple created that allows for adaptive bitrate signal. And what that does at a high level for the user is it limits buffering. And I'm not super technical, but what you're doing is instead of taking a linear stream that will play that is at the whim of your broadband or internet and data connection where you might incur buffering because there's a lack of connectivity there, HLS, what it does is it will take multiple bit rates and decide which one will to use best at that time, and it sends it by packets. So, for example, if I have a 128 kilobit per second MP3 and a 64 kilobit per second AAC, both pretty much similar in quality, even though one is twice as fast as the second. If my connection drops because it's delivering in packets, the HLS protocol will notice that and it will stop sending the 128K packet and start sending the 64K packet, limiting buffering. And because you have two different codecs at two different speeds, you can't really tell the difference until it's very hardly audible. Some people could even add a third, even do a little bit lower. So why is this important? Again, the user experience, but what we're seeing right now is we're moving towards connected cars and in-car playing with streaming. This is going to be huge because as we're driving, our connectivity is always changing. So you want to be sure if you want to be in your car streaming, you want to be with adaptive bitrate, and certainly something that we could help you with at StreamGuys.
You know, that you actually gave a really good explanation of how adaptive bitrate works. We're kind of fortunate in that I did a Streaming University series about this, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that series. It's on YouTube, where I explain lots of different aspects of streaming, but adaptive streaming takes up one whole chapter of this. And I've got some, I'm proud to say, I have some terrific graphics that explain this graphically. What I find pretty interesting is that, you know, a lot of content distribution networks, CDNs, do not yet support adaptive multi-rate streaming. And you mentioned Apple HLS. That's probably the most popular one. There's also Microsoft Smooth Stream, and then there's MPEG Dash. But for distribution of audio, Apple HLS, HTTP live streaming is what HLS stands for. So you guys are supporting this. And I don't know if you've tried this or not. You know, Telos, our Omni division, our Telos division, it's marked under both names. We make this Zipstream product, and we have the X2 product and the R2 that both can do adaptive streaming, which means they can put out 2, 3, 4 streams, same audio, just different bit rates, formatted in the Apple HLS format. Does that work with your service? Can we point these packets at you guys, and then you're keeping track of all the different bit rates that the station is producing?
Point them all to us, Kirk, please.
Yeah. Point all those packets there.
Real quickly, I one point of differentiation here. First, we recommend the Omnia X2 quite often because it's a terrific price point, and it does offer the adaptive bitrate streaming. What we found out sometimes is folks don't have enough reliable bandwidth to send out 2, 3, 4 signals at a time. What we can do is we could actually take one stream, give us a high bit rate 128 MP3. We could transcode that in the cloud for you and then deliver it via HLS. So we could take one stream, break that into 2 or 3 streams on our side, taking no additional bandwidth from your resources, and then we can deliver the adaptive bitrate streaming via HLS.
Okay, so you can do it either way. I can send you my best possible stream. You guys transcode that. And of course, as an audio guy, I don't like the word transcode. I know it's pretty good, but I would rather natively encode if I have the bandwidth, the upstream bandwidth. Absolutely. From my radio station to you. I'd rather natively encode at, say, 256, 128, 64, and maybe another one at 32 or 48, and send all those to you. But I realize we are talking about upwards of 0.5 megabit per second all the time to send you, like 4 different bit rates. Although I think 3 may be more common. So maybe we're looking at 350 kilobits per second all the time that I would be sending to you natively, and that you don't have to transcode it. Or I can send you one really good stream and maybe 256, and you're transcoding it to lower rates. So that's cool that you guys can handle that either way. And I should point out the smarts of this system is in the player, the client software or hardware. So it's the player that the consumer has in their hand, in their dashboard, that says, hey, it's taking me 6 seconds to download 5 seconds worth of audio. I may have a problem here. I need to ask for a lower bit rate. And so the player, upon initial connection with the stream server, is made aware of the different bit rates offered. But if the player also says, hey, I just downloaded 5 seconds worth of audio in 0.23 seconds, I think I can ask for a higher bit rate if one exists. So that it's really cool that the player determines what happens, because the player knows, and it's the only thing that really knows, how long it's taking to download these typically 5-second chunks of audio. So I'm excited about this technology. I'm glad that you guys are supporting this.
Yeah, you make a great point in bringing up the player. And just a point of reference, our player, SG player, is HTML5 audio and video enabled, and it is HLS enabled. That infrastructure needs to be built into the player. So obviously, if you're looking into streaming partners and are interested in HLS, you want to ask about that in the player. Also important is in the app development. So you want to, if you're talking to an app developer for radio centricity, you want to make sure that HLS is supported because not all apps are the same.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. My radio stations, we use a different CDN, and our players are not HLS compatible. And I think our CDN has said we're not going to do anything with HLS anytime soon. They may later on, but I'm delighted that you guys have taken the bull by the horns here and moved ahead with this. Chris Tobin, I'd kind of like to move the conversation because Matt mentioned video. And as a radio guy, we don't always look at videos as adding that much. Just it's kind of a novelty. It's radio with pictures. But we also know that this is a cool thing to offer. People may want to see either a music video representation or see the hosts and guests who are talking, like you are on this podcast. I want to move to Matt, ask him about the video playback and streaming capabilities. But Chris, what are your thoughts on video added to what has traditionally been radio streams?
Oh, absolutely. Video complements everything we do in the business. It's been a long time coming, and it can be done I'll say economically. I'll say it can be done very easily, and you should definitely be considering it in your business model. Anybody that doesn't, well, then you should just return your license and stop doing what you're doing. I'll just be honest. I mean, I've worked on several projects over the last several years, and every time we've added a video component, I'm not talking a point of view camera sitting in the studio and you look at the back of a disc jockey. I'm talking about video that actually does something, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute pieces, and not a 1 hour, diatribe on something. Stuff that complements the product or the program. And I've seen results that have been very, very, very good at making money. So both for spoken word formats, sports, news, and or for music.
So that's interesting. So Matt, talk to me about video streaming along with audio. If I wanted to get into this for one or more of my radio stations, where do I start?
You start by emailing me at mkellogg@streamguys.com. And then we're going to get the conversation going. Listen, visual radio is here. It's happening. I mean, from the Lavo Ruby that you were talking about earlier, they promote the visual radio experience even from the mixing board. We want eyeballs and earballs on content at all times if we can make it happen. We have partnered with Enco, who has created one of the single best visual radio automation systems in the marketplace. And what we can do is create automatic camera switching based on voice. So if I am a morning show or in a newsroom, we could have video cameras set up that would stream the video and the audio. And as one mic is spoken into, the camera will catch that, and automatic switching is done there. From a music radio perspective, this is really exciting because what you could do is create your own MTV. So if I have a morning show and I'm going to go to, say, the latest Bruno Mars track on the radio, everybody on the radio is hearing the song, but those that are viewing online are actually seeing the accompanying music video. You can also display graphics, local news, local weather, local content. One thing that I remember back in my days working in San Francisco sports radio was our morning show was on the local regional sports network. And every morning, a producer would come in and he had his camera switcher and they had the lights and they were doing this. This can be completely automated now. So you're freeing up time, you're freeing up money, and you're freeing up resources. And I think just right off the cuff for visual radio, when you're looking at opportunities to serve your sponsors and your advertisers, you can not only talk about them, now you can show them. You want to take a look at this great piece of equipment. You want to take a look at this. Here it is right there for you. I think it's really exciting. And what we're also seeing outside of the United States, there are regions that have no real data limits. So people are FaceTiming or using video chat in place of the in place of a phone call because there's no data limitation. So people are live streaming everything because they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. I was just thinking about my own experience with this, and you know, I have 2 radio stations in America and Samoa, and internet there is pretty bad. It's going to get better eventually, but it's pretty bad, which actually has been great for traditional radio. People just, you can't really get other services. But on the cable network, the cable channels are real popular, and my radio stations for 10 years now have had a cable channel and little lipstick cameras in the control room. And we actually, we didn't, well, back then you couldn't buy anything that automatically switched based on mic levels. Now you easily can. There's all different automations and systems that do that. But anyway, we paid a guy, one of the morning show guys, to come in and just switch cameras. So we had 4 cameras in the control room and put this on the cable along with the station's audio, and it's been well received for 10 years. And now, of course, we're going to be moving that onto the streaming platform. Although, again, we have enough trouble just getting 2 audio only streams off the island. Speaking of streams, Matt, can you give me an idea of the bit rate that might be involved with streaming video plus audio going out to people out in the field? How much bandwidth we'd be consuming for that?
You would be looking at close to a megabit per second if you were looking at HD video. Like 720p would be about a megabit per second, 2 megabit per second for 1080p. Then again, if you're looking at something like adaptive bit rate over HLS, you're looking at maybe a combined 3 to 4 megabits per second if you have a 2 megabit, 1 megabit, 750 kilobit, and then a 400 and a 128. So it really adds up.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's a whole new world of bandwidth, but that's we get ever increasing bandwidth, and I'm sure it'll video adaptive streaming can take the lowest position of audio only and a still picture. I think I read a spec one time where that's a pretty good fallback. Chris, do you have some experience with what I know you do, video streaming from your live broadcasts and broadcast stations? What does a customer have to put up with in terms of bandwidth usage?
Well, 2 projects I've worked on over the years, we did do adaptive HLS, like a MPEG dash, that type of stuff. And we found that the user experience, the UE, worked out very well. A lot of folks, because of bandwidth limitations on their cell phone, wherever they were located, or maybe using Wi-Fi. This was a sports broadcast I was doing, so a lot of sports bars people were low bandwidth. Worked out just fine with the multiple streams that we were putting together. I would say for broadcasters today, what they have to look at is it's a opportunity to expand, do the multiple rates, try and remember that most of your end users, the audience, isn't always at the most high end of bandwidth opportunities on their devices. And I can tell you from riding the subway every day here in New York City that most people, and I can count, say, several hundred people on one single subway car, 70% of them have their smartphone in their hand. They're watching some kind of video, whether it's live streaming, because the subway platforms you can get your cellular service, or if it's on-demand video. And I've looked down over people's shoulders. Did I say that? Yes, I did. And watch some interesting video. You can't help it. You're in a sardine can. That's how it works. I didn't make eye contact. As long as you'll make eye contact, you're okay. I will tell you, some of the video was definitely not HD. I'll call it HD quality. It may have been a little staccato at times, but people were putting up with it because it didn't stop. It didn't macro block immediately. And it was interesting, but the content was compelling. I've watched a few things going, wow, that is an interesting topic, and that's a TV program, or maybe it was a cable service, or just somebody's some netcast that they tuned into. But it was the content that I noticed that was catching their attention, because I watched one video was breaking up. I was like, wow, this is interesting. I'm surprised that I even like fast forwarding or trying to do anything. No, it was what they were watching was kept them going. So I think Matt's point is well taken, and I think Kirk, you've probably experienced similar stuff.
I got to agree with Matt and with you on the importance of video streaming, and I guess here's why. In my own life, I find myself consuming a ton of content from YouTube. Most of it talk, a little bit of it music or some concerts, but I'm probably watching the video 10-15% of the time. Usually I'm just listening to the audio, and I do subscribe to YouTube Red, which is really nice because on most devices, the YouTube will keep playing even if it's no longer the big thing on the screen, or even if your phone is if the screen is shut off, it keeps streaming, and that's one of the features that they ask you for a few dollars a month, and that's what they do. And my point is this: if you produce content, like if you produced audio only content, I would be probably nearly as likely to partake of it. But audio and video together, even if I'm not going to watch most of the video, but sometimes it's something, hey, I need to see that, I'll just pick up the phone, turn the screen back on, and it'll buffer up the video and show me that. I guess my point is this: broadcasters probably ought to be thinking the same way that they're about hitting their viewers and listeners the same way that YouTube does. I mean, there are people on YouTube that have millions of followers, right? There are people on YouTube that have as many or more followers than almost anybody on the radio in almost any country. And broadcasters maybe should take a clue from that.
Well, here's something you should consider.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. You almost what?
That it is quicker and easier for me to find content that I want on YouTube than it is on the radio. Although I gotta say, just today I was out and about running some errands, and I don't know, I wasn't interested in flipping the phone on to listen to something, and I tuned in my local NPR station. And I heard a fabulous interview that I would not have otherwise heard. So I guess there's great content everywhere if you know where to look for it or happen upon it. Sometimes I tune to the same NPR station and I'm not impressed at all. So it varies quite a bit. I happened upon a terrific interview today, and in fact I've sat in front of a store for a few minutes listening to it. That's how good it was. I didn't want to get out of the car just yet. So I guess my point is, hey, broadcasters, we really have to be looking at getting content where the listeners and viewers are, because if we're not there when they're listening or viewing, then they're not listening or viewing to us. Chris?
Right, but you have to make sure that the content that you're trying to get them to participate in with you is compelling enough. I recently, in the last year and a half, working on a project, shooting videos of interviews, artist interviews, and what we've been doing is the announcer doing the interview with an artist, and they're talking, and the video I've been shooting is a single camera, single person type thing, and creating a sort of a feel like a POV, point of view, like a fly on the wall. And if I was sitting in the audience or sitting at a bar talking to somebody, what would it be like? And it's actually worked out. We've been doing these little 3-minute pieces. It's actually their song, and then the interview piece. So it's all in one part, and it gets some very good traction. And I started doing it actually with sports program. A friend of mine produces 2 sports shows, and we started doing that. And the hits were unbelievable. Like, wow, wait a minute. But we realized the content was compelling. It was perishable, so it's something that people want to get immediately, otherwise it's gone. But the video complemented it. So in this particular case, as you pointed out, hey, I want to see this. Now, there are some audio-only content creations that make sense, but if you're doing audio-only, you better be able to make it compelling. For example, I listen to Security Now a lot. I listen to it. I don't really have to watch it because I know the 2 people involved, and there's not much going on. Not like there's a whiteboard behind them and they're doing stuff. But the audio, the content is compelling enough that I don't need the video portion to support it. Flip that around to something you're doing where there's a video component that you should be working with, and you neglect it and just try to do audio only, i.e. video. That's where you fall apart. That's where you lose out. So your radio station, you say, oh, I got these interviews we do. We do this whole thing. How am I supposed to get people to find out? Well, first of all, idiot, you have a website. Maybe you should be announcing on the radio and getting people in the habit of checking out your website when they get up in the morning to see what's going on so they can participate. Then you should be making sure that the elements that they can download to their portable device are short enough, say 3, 4, 5 minutes only, of what's going on. So you give them a tease so they want to come back for more. Use your website as a portal to what you're doing on the radio. And then you could do the reverse. So if they're in the car listening to your station, as you pointed out, Kirk, you have an NPR station, you heard something you like, but you would never know it was there. Well, because they're not reaching the audience in the way they probably should. And remind them, go to the website, check it out. I mean, we have folks that check our website out every day to the point where if we forget to post something because we're working on it the night before, we'll get an email or a comment or something like, hey, I thought you guys did an interview with so-and-so, and we heard the radio portion on the stream, but we want to get more of the details because we know there's more to it. Where is it?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want that kind of feedback, but you also need to make sure you have a workflow in place that supports that. And I think, and I was saying earlier with Matt when we were talking about, you mentioned, you asked about streams in the marketplace in New York City and what I thought and what my impression. There are a lot of streams in New York City that it's just audio. And I listen, and sometimes it's an interview. I'm going, wow, I'd love to see the video of that interview because I think they're talking about something that's visual. And sure enough, it is. There are props, if you will, in the studio with them, and they're talking about and trying to describe it. Nowadays, that kind of stuff is, you shouldn't make that the primary. That could be a secondary or tertiary type content. If you're a guitarist and you're talking about the latest thing you're doing and you want to show somebody, here's how I make the sound, people tend to want to see you doing it as well as hear it. So the two complement each other.
Yeah.
So I think that's what broadcasters need to get back into thinking about is how we create the stuff, how we got to where we are today as an industry. And that's what's key. And Enco is working with the visual radio. I looked at their stuff at the NAB. I was looking at the guys at Multicam Systems, which have a very nice product. I bumped into 2 radio station operators that use it, and I was like, wow, I'd never even heard of these guys. And I found out who they were, and I think now they have an office, I think in Michigan. They're a French company. So Enco, Multicam, there's a few folks out there doing stuff. If you understand what it is you're trying to have as an outcome, the trick is, what is your outcome with all this energy? Then you'll have an idea of what to put in place, or as Matt was saying, the user experience.
Matt, we're going to wrap up this segment here pretty quickly. What you got a final thought or two on video with radio?
Yeah, I think Chris really kind of nailed, put the hammer on the nail there. At the end of the day, it's all about content. It's always about content, right? So, but the thought that came to mind when I was listening to you was, for the longest time, radio broadcasters, by way of the media itself being radio, has, kind of viewed the media landscape, pre 1492, the world is flat, the media world is flat, when it turns out that, the media world is round, and and I always kind of think of like a sphere, where one person's listening here, but some person's watching here, over here, some people's reading. Kirk, you have an online version of a newspaper from your radio station. It's a similar situation. So and the other thought that I have on this is, when you think about the large media corporations, the Fox, the CBS, these multi-billion-dollar media companies around the world that have stakes in print, in radio, in video, for the longest time, you had to be one of the big guys in order to do that. Well, you don't have to anymore, especially as local radio is getting cannibalized year over year. Local radio, at the end of the day, will always be the first person somebody tunes to when something goes wrong. We know that for a fact. That's the first place somebody's going to go to for news, for weather, when they're in their car, right? So why not extend an invitation to not just the listeners listening, but saying, hey, we want to cover your world, your local world, and now you can affordably. A radio station can provide compelling video content, can provide compelling blog or print content along with radio, and provide that 360-degree media experience.
That is a really good way to say that. I like that. And as a consumer, I guess I find myself fitting into that pretty well. So we could talk about this for a lot longer. We've got to move on with the show. Coming up, we've got a tip of the week from both Matt Kellogg and from Chris Tobin. So hang on just a minute. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by the folks that I work for, the Telos Alliance, and this brand new product, the Omnia Volt. And I put together a video for you to tell you all about it. Here's the Omnia Volt.
More top radio stations choose Omnia than all other competing processors combined. Now meet the Omnia Volt, sharing lineage with Omnia processors like the Omnia 11, electrifying, competitive, market-leading audio in a compact one-rack unit package. With Omnia heritage built in, the Omnia Volt includes Dynamics Magic from Omnia chief algorithm designer Cornelius Gould, including 6 AGC sections from start to finish, deep bass, warmth, and stereo enhancers, 5-band time-aligned limiter, the world's best presets to get you started right, and spectrally pristine final processing designed by Frank Foti. Omnia Volt users love its Quick Tweak feature. Quick Tweak distills years of processing knowledge and proven approaches into simple controls that turn you into a processing pro. Nail your signature sound in minutes using advanced presets or your own settings right from the Volt's front panel or a PC. Omnia Volt brings charisma to your station's audio. FM translators and low-power FM stand out among the crowd. AM stations maximize clarity and coverage. Digital broadcasts sound clear and musical without fatiguing artifacts. Smart design, clearly visible outside and inside. Input and output connections in analog, AES3, Livewire, and multiplex for FM. Automatic input selection handles redundant STLs. Remote control works with today's browsers, tablets, and smartphones. Idealized patch point for external watermarking. And hardened construction to withstand lightning strikes, surges, high RF fields, and harsh conditions.
The new Omnia Volt is stunning. Everyone will know you've got an Omnia on your station.
Omnia Volt is versatile too. DSP Core firmware alters the personality of Volt to fit your changing needs. FM, AM, digital transmission, or studio processing. Volt can even be used as a standalone stereo generator. DSP cores aren't extra cost add-ons. Download the functionality you need for free. The Omnia Volt. Omnia audio processing for any station, and a smart upgrade for aspiring broadcasters. Proven audio processing that'll leave your competitors in the dust.
Wow, you got to try this thing out. The Omnia Volt, it's really perfect for almost every radio station. Really powerful and just one rack unit. Hey, thanks to the Telos Alliance and Omnia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, let's get a tip of the week. Chris Tobin, can I hit you up first for your tip this week?
Sure. Just to follow up on before we talk about throughout the show, the streaming, web, all that stuff, it's augmenting your business model. Don't treat it like a separate thing. Don't think it's something totally independent. It's augmentation, okay? Just remember that. So, speaking of streaming and everything else, if you're doing broadcast and outside broadcast, remotes, whatever you want to call them, and you want to do insertion to your stream, consider either going directly to your CDN from your remote site, if you're set up to do that, or do the smart thing and do a solid link from your outside broadcast back to the station and have some mechanism at the station to turn it around into your streaming system. I was working with somebody recently where they were trying to do this sports broadcast for a high school, and they were trying to go direct to their CDN, which made total sense in principle, but the methodology, the linking, was trying to do it over a cellular connection and something else. And I was like, if you get a better connection back to the station, they said, well, yeah, we can. We could do it this way. I'm like, do that method and then go back to your CDN. I get a call 3 weeks later. Wow, we've been able to do more high school games because of that, because now we know where the weak link was. So think about the transport mechanism. So we're talking StreamGuys. We're talking with Matt. I can say from working with the company as an end user over the years, they get it, they understand, and they do realize there's two parts to every, two sides to every question and issue. Understand what you're trying to accomplish, and if you're going to improve on your broadcast model to make more money, then if you're doing outside events, understand what you're trying to do, get from point A to point B. Same technique TV's been doing for ages with their microwave trucks. Radio now has to get into that same thinking.
Good deal. Good advice too. Kind of use what works. And I guess part of the reason they maybe could get a better connection back to their studio is they were using different gear that mitigated connectivity problems. Whereas if they're going directly to the CDN, that's what they're sending. And well, it does make sense. And plenty of people do that direct. They interrupt the regular feed of the CDN with their remote. That can make sense, but you may have a better solution, an engineered solution back to your broadcast station.
Right.
Cool.
Think of it in terms of not the last mile; it's the first mile.
Yeah. Good point. All right, and that's, by the way, that's a whole subject we didn't get to talk about on the show because the hour flies by. Is this outside broadcast capability that StreamGuys offers? But Matt, do you have a tip to leave our listeners and viewers with?
I do. One of the things that is interesting in the 21st century technology world we live in is streaming is now becoming the main component in which you're going to listen to radio in your home. We now have the capability to put the radio back in the home. Gone are the big receivers and the speakers. Everything is very much condensed, but people have gone away from the live radio experience. And what we're seeing right now is Alexa becoming more adopted and putting radio back in the home. And recently, Alexa opened up their development with the term skills, or in other words, apps that you can create to call up your radio station, your local radio station and home. And if you're interested in developing a skill for Alexa, you want to make sure that your live stream and on-demand content is available via HTTPS. If it's not secured, you're not going to get approved for an Alexa skill. And if you don't have the developing resources, you can always contact me. And today I've been given the green light to offer a 50% discount on our development costs for an Alexa skill. And we also recommend to, if you're thinking about it, then do it. There's a name grab going on right now with Alexa skills. So for just like websites, right? You had to register your domain. Folks are now registering their Alexa skill with their radio station name. So you can now call up a radio station. Right now, if you don't have a skill, you have to know the call letters because it's being piped in via TuneIn most of the time. With an Alexa skill, I can call it up by the name that most of us know our brand radio stations by a name, not so much the call letters. So be aware of that as well. That's a great point, because for a couple of years now, I've had one of those Amazon Echoes, and I've said play Q102, and I mean there's other Q102s, but sure enough, it came up playing Q102 W. From 10. Well, great. Q102 to play the morning show prize giveaway, and I could have a segment called the morning show prize giveaway, and Alexa would play that for me. Is that about how that works, or one of the ways? That's absolutely right. So we have created a skill, a couple of them now, but WWOZ is one that we've created that not only carries the live stream, but it also carries the on-demand content. So I could say, Alexa, play WWOZ. Then I'll be asked if I want to hear the live stream or on-demand. And I could say, play the jazz show from Tuesday, and it's going to give me the Tuesday show. By the way, all of that on-demand is automated completely 100% for the last 2 years with our SG recast. So all of their day parts are made available on demand without a human being touching it for the last 2 years. Wow. Listen, Matt, this is so much good information. I know we're going to need to have you back on after I get to play with some of this stuff and get a little bit more understanding. And we got to go. We are flat out of time. So Matt Kellogg from StreamGuys, the website would be what? StreamGuys.com? StreamGuys.com. And you could reach me by email, mkellogg, KELLOGG, @StreamGuys.com. We're here to serve you. We want to be able to work with you. We understand we're not the best partner always, but we want to make sure that you are with the best partner. Good deal. Matt, thank you so much for taking an hour of your time and the prep time as well to come be with us, especially from your new busy office in San Luis Obispo. Chris Tobin, thank you for being here as well, buddy. Appreciate you chiming in.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks, Matt, for joining us. It's been a real honor, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
All righty. And thanks to our producer, Suncast, back at the GFQ Network for producing today's show. Appreciate that very much. Thanks to Andrew Zarian he's the founder of the GFQ Network. And we got to go. With also thanks to our sponsors. Be sure you check them out, lavo.com/TWiRT, bswusa.com, and check out my friends at the TELUS Alliance and the new Omnia Volt. You'll see it right on the website. I'm Kirk Harnack. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.